Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting if you email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Today we have a blockbuster show for you. Remember that topic, the writer with no hands? We've done a couple of shows on it in the past, but there's a lot of new stuff. We're interviewing Mel Elorche, who wrote an article for Covert Action magazine. CIA's Hollywood liaison may be behind the disappearance of Hollywood screenwriter who knew too much. But the thing is, here's the subtitle. Gary Devore vanished mysteriously after he had learned about a bribery scheme orchestrated by Panamanian General Manuel Noriega, who recorded high-ranking officials having sex with minors in his house. So a lot of new stuff in here. So Mel Elorche, are you there?
I'm here. Happy to be here. How are you, Ed?
Oh, I'm out of breath. I'm getting all falling apart here. Thank you so much for being patient with me. But tell the audience, who is Mel Elorche?
I'm a screenwriter and journalist. First and foremost, a journalist from Holland. And I moved to the States about 18 years ago, and I live in California right now.
Gotcha. So how did this story here, I guess we know it as the writer with no hands. That's how it used to be called in the old days. How did you come across this story?
Well, a friend of mine published a novel like a long time ago. I think in 2016, The Writer with No Hands. And I was interested in this, and we got to talk. And then I was introduced to the widow of Gary Devore, Wendy Devore, Old Devore. And I started interviewing her and then several people. And it seemed to me a fascinating case without any conclusion or answers whatsoever for about 28 years.
Yeah, but this story was fascinating before this recent Covert Action article came out, which makes it even more fascinating. Now, you have a film.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's all this stuff. Now, you have a film coming out called Midnight Rider. Can you talk about that?
Not too much yet. It's based on his disappearance. And I extended the research that was done by several people who did a lot of groundwork in the investigation. Mike Purge, Dennis O'Keefe, Matthew Alford, Don Crutchfield, several people, Dr. Hughes in this. And, I just took it further.
Yeah, people can go back in our archives and look up Don Crutchfield, or the Hollywood PI, I think it's called. We talked about this case with him. Then we had on Pierce Redmond and Stecker, I forget his first name, who were friends with Matthew Alford. Yeah. Oh, you know Stecker?
Yeah. Tom Stecker
and
Matthew Alford are both friends of mine. Yeah. They have done a lot of research on the academic side of things. So they studied the relationship between the intelligence agencies, CIA amongst them, and Hollywood.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't talked to Tom Stecker in years and years and years. But why don't you tell us, let's start here. Who was Gary Devore, who was the writer?
He was a self-taught writer, a screenwriter with a big love for movies. And he became successful in the 80s after one of his polishes on the Dogs of War in 1980, I believe, came out. And since then, actually, his career took off as a screenwriter. It had a little dip during the 80s, late 80s, and then it picked up again. And he really fought for his work. He was also a script doctor, so he analyzed other people's scripts, which he hated doing. But it sort of brought in the money. He was a complex character. Funny guy, very generous, also volatile. He had many sides to him. It's a fascinating character. But also, he could keep secrets very well. And at some point in his life, in the beginning, let's say early 80s, he became involved with certain people who worked in the intelligence community. And allegedly, and there is some proof that he dabbled in translation work and cryptography for the intelligence agencies of the books. There is no record of that. It's very easy to recruit people, or let's say easier to recruit people of the books than to use them on a payroll. Because if something happens, like in the case of Gary Devore, who went missing in 1997.
Well, how about this? Where did he go to college, and what was his employment like before he became a writer?
Sorry, can you answer that again? Sorry,
yeah, I was wondering, 'cause I'm trying to get an idea of his background and like how he got into, if he did get into intelligence work, how could that be? Do we know what college he went to and what he did for employment before he became a writer?
Oh, he did several things. He was a professional rodeo rider. He had a love for horses. He did that. So he was a real cowboy. Obviously, script doctoring. He had several jobs. I think he had a brief stint in the military, but he had knee problems and all that. I think he went to school in Hollywood. Good relationship with his parents, and he basically himself. He read a lot of books. He taught himself how to write. Very critical. He analyzed articles.
And what about his family? What about his family and his parents? Any indications that they could have been involved in the intelligence community?
No, not at all. These were, a Jewish background. They were very devoted to their family. I also had a sister. I think his sister became estranged from Gary at some point. I'm not sure. I don't really know too much about that relationship. But apparently that relationship was, became estranged at some point. No, they were very tight, and he was just very good at keeping secrets. So he did not confide in his parents what he did at some point during the 1980s, if that was true.
Well, then how about, because I saw, too, there was some, he said he was good at keeping secrets. He had these 2 phone lines in his house from the article, I'm reading. He had a second phone line in his house that only he was allowed to pick up and talk on.
Right, yeah, allegedly, yeah. Well, what I did find is that he made notes about searching assets, whatever that means. So when you find notes written by a person, and 30 years later, could be anyone, right? So evidence-wise, that's not evidence anymore because the fingerprints are, you know what I'm saying? So if you find notebooks 30 years later, you don't know if it's true or not. Well, that's what I found. He did go on very long trips, not only for the writing, because he loved writing, but also for photography. He was a great photographer. He photographed nature and people, and specifically people. I still don't know who they are on the photos. But it could have been people he had to follow or recruit at some point. That's what I don't know. Well, the photos are there.
So he did turn up dead. He turned up dead. He was murdered. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's murdered.
Allegedly
Right?
murdered, yeah.
And he also used to take these trips down to South America. Any indications maybe drug trafficking or organized crime, some kind of crime involvement?
Certainly South America, Panama a few times, again off the books. If you travel on via air on a military or intelligence plane, that there is no logbook. There are no logs of that. So allegedly he went there a few times. I don't know about any drug trafficking. I think he witnessed certain transactions.
Then what can you tell us about
at certain air bases?
Oh, really? How do you have that information?
Well, I can only go via notes I spotted he left behind.
Gotcha.
So this is all speculation.
Gotcha. So now, why don't you describe to us the circumstances surrounding his death, and first disappearance and then death?
So the disappearance, we go back forward now in the 90s, like 1997. It's the summer of 1997. He was reported missing on the 29th of June. I believe it was a Sunday. But he was actually expected to be at home in Santa Barbara, June 28th, Saturday. Or Saturday, like midnight.
Right.
He had a last phone call with his wife very, very late night on the Friday because he was driving home from New Mexico, Albuquerque. He was staying at a ranch of a dear family friend, the actress Marsha Mason. He was finishing a script. And he finished the script, was really excited, jumped in his truck, his white Ford Eddie Bauer model, and he drove from New Mexico, on, I think, Highway 58, Mojave, and turned onto Highway 14. And around that, I think close to midnight, he called Wendy a few times. He misdialed at some point. I think the police had a ping and a report of his calls. And then it ended dead. And the last time he was seen was near a Denny's restaurant, like a deli.
Right.
Yeah. There are disputes what kind of phone he used because he called a landline at home and he misdialed a few times. It's a little unclear there, but the last time he was heard of, he apparently said, "Well, I'm really pumped right now. I'm." And apparently that was a code for saying I'm in danger. And I think Wendy suspected that something was really off.
Oh, really? He had a signal with his wife that if he was in danger, he would give her the signal?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm really pumped right now. That's the theory. That's what I think. That's what she thought that. Well, that's what he said. He must have been in danger. Something happened because she felt really off. When you sense your loved one is in trouble and their voice sounds different, you understand what I'm saying? So if you talk to someone who is in danger or in a particular situation under threat, you can hear it. It's the vibration of the voice. It comes through. You must feel it. So that's the sensation she got. She got really anxious. He never turned up home. And there were no cameras or working cameras in and around that Denny's restaurant.
To back up the story a bit, you said he had just finished a script and he was staying at the home of the actress Martha Mason?
Correct. Yep.
That's interesting.
Yep.
So what was that script about, do we know?
Yeah, well, it was titled The Big Steal. He had an idea to revamp or revisit an old movie called The Big Steal with Robert Mitchum.
Yeah.
That was set in Cuba, and it was also about a detective going after a bunch of crooks. And during his travels, his experience, he thought about a news story. He said, "Hey, I have a great story here about my experience in Panama." This was also just before and during the U.S. invasion of Panama, which he found dreadful. He hated it. Anyway, so he has all that information. And imagine, he's a writer. He goes on trips with so-and-so who work in the intelligence community. And he encounters and sees and knows certain information. He wants to use it in a new story. And one day he revisits that old movie, The Big Steal, and said, "Hey, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is what my story will be about. This will be about a detective who's chasing people who want to steal money from the government or the other way around." So he fleshed out that story. He works on it, and he finished it in New Mexico. It's the best place for him to finish his script. He went there a few times. He rode horses, going for walks and all that. He finished it. He had a hard copy with him. He had his laptop, his saddle, his gun. He always had a gun in his car, a Colt 38, I believe.
Yeah.
And on the night of June 27th, he drove back to Santa Barbara.
A couple of quick questions.
And
was this script ever turned into a movie, or the script is gone forever now?
I think there are copies of the script circling around, or it is somewhere. It's never been made into a movie. Obviously, we have the old movie, The Big Steal. As far as I know, it's not out there. No.
Now, another question: had he taken this exact same route previously?
Not yet. I mean, in my mind, I know people who have. I have in Midnight Rider, the detective goes over the same route.
But I mean, did Gary Devore, did he take this trip before and use that same road? Was this something he had done, created a pattern? If someone was following him and they wanted to harm him, that they would know he would take this route?
That is a great question, yes, and I think he did. And it's also in an area. It's also in an area that was during that time a hotbed for. That was actually the investigative field for a DEA task force.
Okay.
And a DEA task force, a joint task force of the LA Sheriff's Department and DEA. And that operation was called Silent Thunder. And it started early in the 90s. And it ended, I don't know if it's done, it's ended somewhere in the 2000s successfully, as they say. They arrested a lot of people. Well, that task force was to roll up meth crooks and people who trafficked a lot of weapons. So there was a lot of criminal organizations and trafficking going on in that whole area, in the Palmdale area, Antelope Valley.
And there's also like
an
Air Force base too nearby, right?
Right. Edwards Air Force Base, yep. And you have Lockheed Martin.
Okay.
So a few government properties, secured areas, and not unknown to him.
So one thing to consider here is Palmdale is not like a big populated area. And if the big industries in town is this big meth operation, defense contractors and the military, they have a lot of influence over the cops investigating local crimes there. Okay, they have a lot of influence over that type of investigation.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's real. And you have people who cannot curb their own, volume. To what extent are you corruptible?
Yeah.
Can you resist that temptation? Is there counterintelligence? And during that time, I think it's an interesting thing. You see a rise of counterintelligence in the late 80s, 90s. How can you screen your officers? If you're part of a task force or an operation, how do you screen it? How do you monitor the corruption level? And I think that is what fascinated me about Gary Devore's case, that it was in the time, during the time, then you see a lot of different covert operations for several reasons. And he was in the middle of it. And I think so that is what fascinated me. And
so let me ask you this.
That was sort of a springboard for bigger investigation. Yeah.
So he turns up missing. The wife immediately knows, hey, he should be home by now. Let me start calling. I'm sure she just called like the local sheriff's department or highway patrol or something like that. But it appears from reading your article that they launched a huge search for this guy in a very short period of time. Am I correct?
Yep. Yeah, they did a citizen search. The SPSO, Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office, under Mike Burge, he was the lead detective there. Sergeant. He asked for assistance from the FBI, Los Angeles Field Office. So they opened a kidnapping case. Straight away after a video emerged from Gary purchasing a few items in a local gas station. I cannot remember where exactly. I have to look it up. But and then these last calls. So the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office said, "Hey, this is." First of all, they asked her to wait 24 hours before she could actually officially report him. But after that happened, they started opening a kidnapping case. And there was a huge citizen search spearheaded by Wendy, obviously, and some of friends, Julia Phillips, a very well-known author and producer at the time. They got some help from Michael Sands, who was a Hollywood publicist, among other things he did in life. And a lot of people came out of the woodwork to find him, the last traces. They searched, I think her daughter hired infrared equipment to search the waters near the California aqueduct. She hired a helicopter.
So they had a lot of resources and connections to pull off a big, to get the cops off their butts and actually have them do something for a change. Because in an average case, they're not going to go looking for this guy with helicopters and stuff. Guy turns up missing.
Yeah. And nothing was found in the waters of the California aqueduct. Nothing. Zip. They found a sign on Highway 395, and we call it the Gary sign. It's a huge board with Gary written on it. It's on like one of those telephone poles, electricity poles, with an arrow sign. They did find that.
Yeah, there's a photo. You have a picture of this sign on the Covert Action Magazine article website, and it's a big giant plywood. Like someone just got a piece of plywood, okay, and then they spray painted on there Gary, and it's pretty high up too, man. Right? They put that up as a bit of a height there. It seems to me from this picture, and like you said, there's an arrow, and then in the article you talk about that arrow points to some kind of a shed or something. Tell us that.
Yeah. So during the citizen search, Wendy and a few friends, I think 5 or 6, they found that sign and they decided, hey, okay, let's follow the arrow.
Yeah.
And that led to a dirt road. They found a one-room cabin with discarded weapons. That's what they described to me. I have not received any photo material of that. They reported that straight away to the SBSO, the police, and the FBI, and apparently it was not followed up.
Well, that's interesting. So they had
But whatever.
They had
Go ahead.
The insight to take a picture of the sign saying Gary and the arrow, but when they get to this cabin, they don't take pictures of the scene over there with the guns and stuff?
I don't know.
They may have.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
That's my question. So let's say allegedly they found Kevin with weapons. And I think everything in this case is allegedly. It's hearsay. Evidence was destroyed, burned. Because also what happened during that time is that the FBI team that was on this case, on this kidnapping case, they found a burned out vehicle, a truck.
Really?
Yeah. North of, if you have Highway 14 going back, so if you have Palmdale, you're going back up to Mojave, and you're going all the way up to California City. They found north of that in a ravine a burned out vehicle. And I have to find out, just look up the date again. But it was a few days later or a week later.
Was anybody able to trace that vehicle back to the owner?
No, everything was burned with high accelerant. So what do you have? DNA destroyed, no tire tracks, nothing. So they marked that up in their reports, but that was sort of discarded or shelved because they could not follow up on this anymore. So all these little findings, because they're all findings, they led to nothing. And Wendy went on public television for days to see if there is anyone who could give any, leads or clues. Have they seen Gary anywhere? Was he spotted somewhere? That is what Don Crutchfield did. He actually went, and his partner went on trips because he wanted to help Wendy. Mike Burch did the same thing. So a lot of people, looked for, tried to help.
But they didn't find it until they were tipped off by some shady lawyer. Right? What's the story with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting character, right?
Yeah. Doug Crawford.
Douglas Crawford, yep. He apparently he worked for Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. He worked for them until he, was fired or resigned, apparently. And he decided he was an avid car. He loved car parts, so he tried to build, cars with car parts, whatever. He had it in his backyard, and he, he's also a lawyer, or was a lawyer, because he was disbarred, right? A few years ago, he was disbarred because he brought a stun gun to one of his cases. I don't know what it is, but anyway, he lost his license. Douglas Crawford went on trips to find car parts. And apparently he found some material along the California aqueduct. And he was building a theory. He was following Gary Devore's case because it was well publicized in 1997. And he decided to call the law enforcement. He called the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office. They didn't take it very seriously on a Friday night. They told him to call back on a Monday. And he also emailed Michael Sands his theory that he saw car parts submerged in water. And it may be that's where Gary Devore was. So they followed up on a Monday in July 1998. Is it correct? Yeah, July 1998. And he told them, "This is you need to go to Highway 14. There was a crossing, and that's where Gary Devore may be found." And the Sheriff's Department of Santa Barbara took a chance. They went over there, and they started dragging the aqueducts, and they found his truck.
Well, let me stop you for a second
in
here.
water.
How far from this location where they found this Ford Explorer in the California aqueduct, how far is that from the last known location that Gary Devore was by that Denny's?
You mean the Denny's restaurant?
Yeah.
The point? It's not. I need to look that up. Actually, that's a good question. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure some listener out there will do a little map search, map quest on there, and figure it out easy enough.
Because
yeah.
That restaurant is not. If you have the exact crossing, then you go from the 58 and turn into the 14. It's not too far. You have that restaurant, the Denny's.
Within 30 minutes to get there?
Maybe. It's very, let's not, I don't know, let's not, we have to really
Gotcha.
Look that back up.
Now, there was another strange occurrence, too, that when the divers were going down to examine this vehicle and start dragging it out of this aqueduct, there was an unmarked helicopter that stopped by?
Correct, yes. A black helicopter without any tail numbers. That means that, it's probably, related to military or intelligence. Yeah, that was spotted by a cameraman and the SBSO, Mike Burch, the lead detective. He saw that. They were disturbed because it brought a lot of noise, obviously disturbance. It hovered over. When they were doing the recovery of the truck, that helicopter came down fast, hovered over that area and left. As if it was just observing the whole scene. Yep.
And then there was something about when they went to look into that, somebody called up the cameraman from the Air Force Base, but then it turned out that was a fake phone number and the guy didn't really exist there?
Actually, it was, and then they called, several members of the press, they called the Air Force Base, and they denied sending any helicopter, any black helicopters over that area. And then Mike Burch followed up on that. And he got a call. He got a call from an Anderson from the Air Force Base. And they said, "Hey, listen up. We send a few people over there because we got radio interference, just so you know." And Mike was apparently confused about this. And he said, "Well, we were just recovering a truck." And this person, Anderson, he said, "Well, if you need us, you know where to find me." So Mike called back. He called the Air Force Base, and he asked for Anderson, and they denied that phone call ever took place.
Just incredible.
So these occurrences are very, weird. I think that confused Mike Birch a lot. I think that is also what he told the press, because he gave an interview to the press. It's on record what happened, what he said. But he sort of let that go.
Then the police do discover skeletal remains inside the truck with the hands are missing, which is hence the story of the rider with no hands. But then it turns out that's not Gary Devore, right?
Correct. Yes.
Well, what's the story about that? What do you know about that?
Well, we have two coroner reports. The one was done by Chris Rogers, the city, the county LA coroner's office. Did a report that was also inconclusive. It was very unclear. And then Wendy hired an independent coroner pathologist. His name is Dr. Posen. And he came up with two conclusions. And the first was, this is a homicide. He got separately, and in his report he said he got sent the hand bones by the police. They found the hand bones in the back of his truck at some point.
Oh, they found bones.
And he said, the bones were about close to 200 years old. I mean, the whole structure, the whole molecule, atomic structure was off. I mean, it didn't even, I think it was more animal than human. I'm not sure, but it was definitely very, very old. And so his first report, and I can actually tell you that verbatim, is that he said, based on these autopsy findings and historical information available to me, in my opinion, Mr. Gary Martin Devore, a 56-year-old gentleman, died as a result of unknown causes. And although he was found in his 1997 Ford Explorer with reported heavy front end and frontal roof damage, there are no injuries found on the remains to indicate lethal or blunt force injuries. So he thinks that the opinion of this observer is that the manner of death is homicide, and the method used to cause death cannot be determined from the remains examined. So that was his first conclusion. So I think this was what time? I need to go back to the dates. Later, he called Wendy and said, hey, sorry, it's not homicide. He changed his mind.
But this guy he was some kind of a fraud, right? Dr. David Posey wasn't even a real medical examiner or a real coroner, right?
Allegedly, in a different case, I need to look that up again. He changed his mind twice. He did not have the correct credentials, and he also allegedly worked for the city coroner's office for about 2 months. He never had the proper credentials.
Do we know how Wendy found this man? Who directed Wendy to this guy? She just went through the phone book and picked out a guy?
I think she was recommended by someone. I don't know.
But we don't know. That would be so important to figure out who's sending her to this guy here, who seems to have his opinion for sale,
I think he was well known at the time.
Really?
He had a good reputation at the time, yeah.
Fascinating.
And he hired two experts for dental and DNA. Dr. Sweet, I think the person is in Canada, and Dr. Bird for the dental work. So she sent the bones to Canada. And Dr. Sweet concluded that these hand bones were very, very, very old.
And they confirmed that it is not the body of Gary Devore.
Yeah.
So it just makes you think, man. And they came up with a body to put in that truck, you know. So they got no problems coming up with a body.
Yeah. So you can see that it is an attempt to distract the public, you know, the public's attention, and that of local law enforcement who work their ass off to find out what actually happened, and are just confused. I think this whole thing was staged to divert the attention.
Yeah, clearly no small operation. This is not a small operation. This is a very evolved operation going on. What can you tell us about this fellow Chase Brandon?
He was a good friend of Gary Devore in the 80s. They met in 1981, I believe, or just before. And they became friends. Whether or not he knows what Gary did in terms of intelligence work. I mean, he denies it. So that's the gist of it. Chase Brandon was a friend at their house a few times. They went on trips. Gary
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Told him on information for his scripts. So I think Chase Brandon is one of the few people who know more about the circumstances. Gary disappeared. But, you know, Chase Brandon worked for the CIA. He was director of CIA Hollywood liaison office at a later stage in his career. He had years of deployment on, black operations, I believe, in South America too. And then later in his career, he became the first director of the CIA Hollywood liaison office. And in this capacity, because he was still employed by the CIA, he cannot talk to the press. He cannot say anything. So
Wendy has some allegations. She makes some allegations in your article here about him being rude and locking himself in Gary's office, and then all of the material on Gary's computer being erased.
Correct.
What do you make of that?
Yep. Well, I mean, apparently, according to the people who were in Wendy's house, this guy got caught with his finger in a cookie jar. A few days or a couple of days after Gary's disappearance in 1997, Chase Brandon visited Wendy at her house, to give his, his sympathy. And he made a few excuses, according to her, to lock himself in Gary's office, and he did. And then someone barged in that room, a friend of hers, and saw Chase Brandon meddling with Gary's computer. And someone else who can corroborate is Frank Thorwald, one of Wendy's friends. He warned Wendy to save everything from Gary's computer the night before, just in case. And it was too late, because when Frank arrived at Wendy's house the day later, he was going to visit her just to help her recovering files or whatever he wanted to help Wendy with. The computer was frozen. Everything was gone. I think he did something with the hard drive. I think he fried the hard drive. and he knew how to do it. And then Frank told me that himself. He called Chase Brandon, and he asked him about it. And Chase said, well, I'm not good with computers. And he basically told him to F off.
So it was an accident that he deleted everything on his computer. That's what he's trying to say?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It's I think...
Oops.
To point all fingers at Chase Brandon, that's not, I did a lot of research. That's not good enough. It's so much more complicated. But he may have known more. He knows also more about what Gary exactly did, and I think he had to do this because of, in his capacity. If let's say, hypothetically, you recruit someone, and this person disappears or dies on, in unfortunate events, and you have to actually know what this person leaves behind in terms of files and information that may or may not disclose sensitive information that could potentially be dangerous or whatever.
National security. It could be national security information on it. But then again, I guess they could have went in there with some warrants and took it, but, I guess that's how they did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're talking to Mel. We're talking to Mel Elorche, and she's written this article here in Covert Action magazine, and she has a film coming out called Midnight Rider, and it's about the story of the writer with no hands, Gary Devore, and his mysterious death, and first missing and then found his truck at least in this water here. What about now all this stuff you have here about Noriega and blackmail and sex? Where does all that come from?
Well, Manuel Noriega is a very interesting, very clever guy. And, I don't know where you want to start with this, but if we go to Gary Devore's interest, he was very disturbed by the invasion of Panama. A lot of innocent people died, as you know.
Yeah.
And to catch Manuel Noriega, who was once on the payroll of the CIA. And also at that time of the former KGB. So he dabbled, he was a hustler, this guy. And he had many secret accounts in Panama to finance, covert operations of his own. And Gary Devore was always fascinated by what led to the invasion and the aftermath. So then you go researching and digging into Noriega's past, what actually happened. And Noriega, as a private person, he hosted a lot of dinners and gatherings for high profile people in terms of government officials, military advisors, at his private house in the jungle of Panama. And for whatever reason, he thought it was a good idea to blackmail people, so he had cameras in his house.
Like the P. Diddy of Panama, right? the P. Diddy Epstein of Panama and Manuel Noriega.
Yeah, but it's a very, very old KGB tactic.
Yeah.
These are very old tactics. Standing, maybe, how old is a camera or whatever you can use as a camera. These are old blackmail, sabotage techniques, and it's dirty tricks, and to use that term, or political warfare in very polite terms. Yeah, they did that. If those cameras and footage exist, I don't know.
And we do know, though, there's pictures of George Herbert Bush with Noriega, And at the time of this whole incident here, Bill Clinton was president. We know about the allegations of Iran-Contra cocaine smuggling, Clinton's connections with Epstein, and there's even allegations about the Bushes with the underage children as well. So they would have the resources to pull off a job like this if there was blackmail material that Gary Devore was about to expose.
Yeah, but I don't know if he actually used that for his script. The person who gave him that information was Chase Brandon. Chase Brandon spoke to John Irvin. John Irvin is a very good friend of Gary Devore. He's a British director who directed Dogs of War, Widows Peak. And apparently, no, hold on a second. Chase Brandon spoke to, excuse me, I need to correct this. Chase Brandon spoke to Frank Thorwald. And Frank worked as an advisor on the Bush administration.
Gotcha.
In the 2000s, right. And when Gary disappeared, he just had left his job and wanted to help Wendy. And he said, well, I spoke to Chase Brandon a few times, and he told me that apparently Manuel Noriega had cameras in his house, to use as blackmail.
We think that Gary.
I don't know how he got that in.
Well, but you think that Gary got that information from Frank Thorwald?
No. I don't even know if Gary knew this. I think this was just planted as information to distract Frank Thorwald from finding the information. Do you understand? So Frank wanted to find out if Chase Brandon knew anything more about Gary Devore, what he did, what he allegedly did in Panama, what was his business doing there, then he went on trips. And then Chase Brandon said, well, here are a few websites, and these were pornographic websites, and apparently filmed by someone in Noriega's house. This is all speculation. I don't know if it's true or not. This is just trying to divert Frank from finding out what Gary knew.
Gotcha. Yeah, we're getting toward the end. Now, there's also a connection to some Russian mobsters. This the United States versus Mikhail. What is that? How does that fit into all this? Because that's involved with that Project Odessa, where the Russians tried to buy a submarine and take it down to Panama and smuggle drugs with. There's an HBO documentary about that. And by the way, those same people that did that documentary were behind my potential pilot that never took off. So, but what's that? Explain that Russian connection to all this with this United States versus McKellen and Project Odessa.
Well, I was just doing my research because I wanted to find out. Wendy at some point was asked to testify for a grand jury. And that was that case. So I wanted to find out why she was asked to testify, and she couldn't remember that anymore. So that was a very, very, very tough thing for me to double-check and research. And I found that case very interesting in itself.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's in the article, because this is just a follow-up on what she told me, and I went to, she could not give me the proper documentation of the grand jury, and it doesn't exist anymore because it's after 5 years they throw everything away.
But Wendy actually testified before a grand jury about this Russian whatever, some kind of organized crime deal, and she's saying her official statement is that she doesn't remember what she testified about?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's another problem.
Not
a problem. It's a difficulty because how do you accurately how do double check all of this?
Right.
It's hard. The other thing is if you place Gary Devore's case in a bigger context, like we said before at the beginning of our conversation, it's in an area during that time.
All right.
So you have the lead up to the Panama invasion, right? The crack cocaine epidemic, the covert operations to stop the illegal drug smuggling, weapon smuggling. You have corruption within law enforcement and intelligence agencies. You have all that going on. The period of the 1980s and the 1990s. That gives a bigger context to Gary Devore's story. Again, during that time, let's say starting 1993, people went missing in that Palmdale area, the Antelope Valley area. A lot of criminal organizations.
That's right. You were telling me this off the air, that there were other murders in that same area. What was the circumstances around those murders?
So if you zoom in, so we are now in mid-90s, right? Mid-90s.
Yeah.
You have a DEA joint task force operation with the LA Sheriff's Department called Silent Thunder. And that was aimed at rolling up meth cooks and weapons trafficking and smuggling of other, things that are not nice. And during that time, people, ended up dead, missing. Not far from where Gary Devore's car was found.
So this was like
and that's all I can say about that.
It was a dumping spot that was being used by people in that area?
Yeah, and they burned things in the desert. Remains were found burned. Cars burned out. Weapons were discarded or found broken. So when you go back to finding that Gary sign, it doesn't surprise me that these people who said they witnessed a cabin with weapons, doesn't surprise me that it's actually true.
Yeah. Let me ask you this.
And there were various... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're almost out of time. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want the audience to know about this whole crazy story, the Gary Devore story?
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
Oh man, you know what? I think in the end, it's not about us investigating, finding out. I mean, yeah, finding out the truth would be great. It's not about us. I mean, after 28 years, it's nice to know for the people who were close to Gary Devore, especially his wife, Wendy, and their friends, but also for other people who went missing and were found dead, that these people find answers. And I think that's what it is, especially in the age of true crime and our craving for true crime movies and documentaries, that we emphasize that it's actually about these people and not about us getting accolades, finding out the truth or whatever. It's I think that's what this is about. That's why I'm doing this. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just trying to, as any other journalist or investigator or filmmaker, you're trying to shine a light on certain things in the hope that it may spark other people, inspire other people to find the truth, because I think that's what it ultimately takes, is that, combined effort. It's fascinating to me too. We all have our different perspectives, And you as a PI, private investigator, you must know that every lead can lead to something else, right? Even if it's a dead lead.
Especially in this story, which it has so many twists and turns. Like, you've taught me so much more about this story in this past 1 hour than I've known in the past 7 years. Like, we've been looking at this. People can read more about this if you go to covertactionmagazine.com. CIA's Hollywood liaison may be behind disappearance of Hollywood screenwriter who knew too much, by Mel Elorche. And keep an eye out, too, for this film coming out called Midnight Rider. And hopefully we can have you come back because we have more questions than when we started. There's just more. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. But Mel Elorche.
I know. I hope I can answer them better next time.
Yeah, maybe if we can watch a film and say, because there's just so much here, man. There's just everybody's just so suspicious in this whole case. But Mel Elorche, thank you so much. We are out of time. Anything comes up about this, you want to come back on the air, let me know. This is a great story.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.